You should receive confirmation of recording. Dear ecohydrologist, dear colleague, it is my honor to open this webinar and on the same time the new cycle of meetings, Ecohydrology for Youth, that our network, Ecohydrology Youth Network, is initiating right now. And on that point, I want to express my gratitude to Sonam Yanki Purba, as also Paul Momet, whose hard professional work helped us to reach that moment and starting of our webinar series. So thanks a lot for you, but also to all steering committee of our network. Before I introduce our honorary speaker, Professor Karl Matthias Wantzen, I would like to mention that our young network has reached now more than 350 members. This year, UNESCO IHP celebrates 50 years anniversary, and also soon Ecohydrology program will turn 30 years old. So we can consider this time as the time of birthday celebration, and our webinar series, as also our young network, is a part of this birthday celebration. I'm sorry I have not organized any cake for you, but maybe you can have some in the afternoon independently. What I want to say is that most of you were not even born 30 years ago when ecohydrology program started. I was a very small kid this time. And this is a very important message that you are now the growing leaders and you are a change makers. And your role in future is to really push forward the concept of UNESCO, concept of intergovernmental hydrological program, and ecohydrology. So this is a very serious obligation. And I hope this webinar and the series of webinars will help you, will give you the tool and spark the idea, new ideas in your minds that will help you to change the future. And this is especially important now because we observe a growing acceleration of our planet degradation. This is in terms of water pollution. This is in terms of greenhouse gases emission and land degradation and all the other pressures. On the other hand, we have a growing consciousness, especially of youth, but still this is not enough. What I believe is, and here I am getting closer to the topic of today's lecture, and what I believe is one of reasons why we are still behind saving our planet is because at some point in our history, our philosophy was dominated by certain dualism. Dualism that is separating nature from human. And as we know very well from the ancestral knowledge, from the native communities, the concept of the very holistic environment where human is part of the environment, not the separated form, was always very alive on the planet Earth. And I believe now it's our role to bring it back. Because last 12,000 years, we were living in the Holocene era, where everything was stabilized. It was very easy for Homo sapiens to develop in such conditions. But unfortunately, we pushed planet to Anthropocene, the time where exactly we don't know where we are heading, but scientists are warning us that next 2-3 decades are really deciding about the future of planet. If we don't want to push all of our planetary boundaries and cross them, which is irreversible, we need to start acting. And this mitigation and adaptation probably will be not successful if we don't change this strange concept, dualistic concept. So we need to treat culture and nature as one element. And this is to highlight the importance of our today's guest, Professor Wantzen, because he proposed a very innovative concept of river culture that I believe is a game changer for us. And we would follow his lecture, but please keep in mind how important it is that we are putting together back these two elements and breaking this cycle of dualism. So here I would like to introduce Professor Wantzen. His research combines understanding of biological diversity and ecosystem processes. As I mentioned recently, he developed the river culture concept, where he analyzes how human-nature relationship can contribute to sustainable management. An expert in animal ecology, freshwater biodiversity, Professor Wantzen has studied aquatic-terrestrial interactions, developed novel sampling technologies, and led international projects on wetland and floodplain management. Sorry, some microphone is on. If you can turn off, thank you. His research was conducted in many countries, including Brazil and Germany, where he contributed to key ecological theories such as the floodplain concept and advanced understanding of functional biodiversity of river systems. Since 2010, as professor of aquatic ecology at the University of Tours, he established the Center for Freshwater Studies and coordinated multiple projects, including a live project for the conservation of freshwater fauna. He was nominated in 2014 with the UNESCO Chair for River Culture, where he realized the mission of UNESCO IHP. And this is also why we can consider Professor as a member of our big UNESCO water family, where our ecohydrology network is also included. So I would like to give the floor to Professor Wantzen right now. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pavel, for this very kind introduction. I will now share my screen. Can you see it in the presenter mode now? Okay,
Yes.
so thank you very much for this invitation. I start with saying that I would like to dedicate this talk to the memory of Inés Escura de Drago and Edmundo Mundi Drago, two outstanding ecohydrologists from Argentina who have been working in the ecohydrological demonstration site. They deceased very shortly, one after another, only a few weeks ago. And I had the honor to work with them on the Paraguay and on the Paraná rivers, where Inés understood or set the basis for understanding the functional ecology. And I will show some examples later. And Edmundo was the outstanding geomorphologist who contributed, without being named, unfortunately, to the functional concept of river morphology. And I will show some of these parts as well. My first picture here shows the view from my hometown, Bingen at the Rhine. It's the lowermost part of the Upper Rhine. You see here in the middle an island where my grandfather, as a medical doctor, treated people that were living there. And by that time, they were so poor that they paid him with fish. And my father hated fish since then, and only by the age of 15 started eating his first fish again. This area here has really imprinted a sense of place, but also a sense of time to me, with the different seasons and the different things that you can see on the Rhine. And I think this summarizes already a little bit what I'm going to talk about. So my current position at Strasbourg and the KIT as a transboundary water chair is on developing scientific, cooperative, and lecturing and teaching projects on 4 different thematics: on urban water systems, on restoration, on human-river relationships, and on water conflicts. And I think this fits very well with also with my UNESCO chair, where I'm doing this beyond the Upper Rhine area, especially in cooperation projects with South America, Africa, and Asia. So the first of 3 parts of my talk is about hydrology, catchment flows, and impacts. Here you see some First Nations Kayapó from Brazil bathing in the very clear water. For them, it's absolutely a matter of course that you can drink the water of these rivers, and then you can eat all the fish unless the garimperos are coming and are poisoning the water with mercury. If we are dealing with aquatic ecosystems, we have to learn to think in 4 dimensions. You see here the mouth of the Vienne River into the Loire, very close to my little former institute in Chinon. We have a longitudinal direction, of course, upstream, downstream, but also if we look at fish migrations or at cultural dispersal, also in the opposite direction. Then we have a transversal dimension, the connectivity with floodplains. As you can see here, the water level is rising and flooding this little beach. And then we have a vertical connectivity with the hyporrheos to the groundwater, where the surface and groundwater are connecting, creating a wonderful ecotone full of life. And lastly, of course, the temporal dimension with natural rhythms, of which I'm talking about today, and the human interventions. You also, this is just a repetition for you, have to think about the watershed and its characteristics, its specific climate and soil characteristics, and they are decisive on all the processes that are happening. Just an example, in the streams that I've been studying in Brazil, we have an extreme nutrient poverty. We have conductivity values below 5 microsiemens, and there the fight between the trees for nutrients is so harsh that we practically do not find shredders, because the trees are defending their leaves with chemical substances that act like antibiotics. So you see that there is a very tight link between the abiotic and the biotic world. In many debates on the ecohydrology sessions, we were talking about you have to be aware where you are in the water cycle. This is extremely important. Independent of your activity, whatever you are doing, where are you in the water cycle? With which hydrological and hydroecological processes are you interfering, or are you collaborating? And I think this is very important, especially in this above water ground or the surface water groundwater interactions. And we have a water shortage in many places of the world today. And here the hidden water, the invisible water of the groundwater, should not be considered as a plethora, but rather as a very rare resource that needs to be better protected against pollution and better managed against wasting water. The ecohydrology principles teach us how to understand and to facilitate natural processes. So to say, I once presented Maciej Zalewski in a talk in Chongqing as a low-tech solutions, and he was quite upset about it. And I said then in the second presentation, highly sophisticated but low tech. And I think that's it. We have to understand nature at its best. We have to understand how the bacteria are working, under which conditions they are working best. We have to see how we can improve the sponge effect of the landscape and how we can facilitate it, rather than putting a hard gray engineering like water basins to store water. So we have the hydrology principle, the biological or ecological principle, the resilience. And we may have very nice ideas about this, but then very often we natural scientists fail. We fail because the public does not want to accept our solutions, because they are different from what they have done years before, or they may be costly, or they are perceived as a restriction to their personal activities. So with culture and education, we are transforming the classical ecohydrology into a transdisciplinary ecohydrology, working together with the people, and in French we say prendre la température. So we have to take the temperature. We have to feel how the public that is the target of our political action is working, and what are the valuescapes. And these values, they are changing among different social groups, but they are also changing over time. There are trends and there are game changers. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to integrate this into our communication strategies. And in my last slide, I will talk a little bit more about that. But another part of the intro, of course, is that river catchments are dendritic networks that are woven between water and land, and they have a gigantic active surface. This means, I compare this with a lung here. For me, these are practically the same principles. In the case of the physical forces that are shaping a catchment, this is just the result of erosion and sedimentation, whereas our lung is really made to increase the active surface so that we can breathe oxygen and transfer it into our blood. The surface of a human lung is about the surface of a soccer field, which is quite impressive in my view. And we will find this principle very often in nature. But it is not only when a river is flooding, it is not only the transversal aspect, it is not only the expansion and retraction of the planform of the water body, but at the same time we are heightening the water level. And this higher water level translates into higher static pressure of this water body, which means we are pressing water from the surface into the groundwater, and vice versa. During low water periods, especially during droughts, it is the groundwater that is chemically defining this stream. And this works not only in rivers, it works all over the world. Wherever you find a natural water body, being marine or inland water, it works like that. And this is something we have to keep in our memories, because especially with climate change and extreme events like extreme droughts and extreme high waters, this is extremely relevant for water quality, for drinking water, and so on. So and this is overlain then with climatic regions. You see here on the left 4 different climates. The upper are more or less irregular, and the lower are like on the lower left, number C here. This is a snowmelt Colorado River, which means that in the springtime, the snowmelt defines a kind of flood pulse, and then followed by this low water period. Whereas we have here in the right-hand graph a winter rain area, and this shapes then the period, the duration of the higher waters, where water runs over areas that are normally dry most of the year, and vice versa, periods when the groundwater is defining the chemistry. This, of course, all happening at different spatial scales, from the very small headwater areas and very small stretches to large river floodplain systems. And the bigger the system that we are considering, the higher is, the longer is the turnover time. So changing a large river floodplain area takes much more time than turning over some gravel in a headwater area. And this again has an impact on biogeochemistry, because turning over also means erosion, chemical erosion, so display of additional nutrients. And whereas more stable conditions also mean that the chemistry of the water does not change any much. And at the way that, in the same way as the water volume is increasing, the periodicity of temperature is also decreasing. So in small streams, we have diurnal change of temperature, whereas big rivers need to be quite exposed to sunlight to change dramatically between day and nighttime. All this has to be seen in this big landscape context. We have the entire drainage basin, which is the highest level of organization, and it goes down to the mesohabitat, where we are talking now about some square meters. And the processes that are in there are corresponding also with the biota that we will find, because these biota are either reacting or are acting in the functional processes of this system. And they are hierarchically in captive, which means you can describe them from higher to lower levels. However, we also have some kinds of reset mechanisms. Think about a waterfall or a lake that is the river that crosses a lake, and then after downstream the lake, we may have a totally different situation as before. Here is an example from the study, the several studies that I did with Edmundo Drago and Inés Escura de Drago. We studied the Paraguay River. We made a classical analysis of the different habitat types, mesohabitats, and then we broke this down to different functional sets, and then we applied statistics about which type of functional set, functional unit, and mesohabitat are occurring where. And then we found very neat response by the biota. It is, for me, it was fascinating that a textbook idea was then really corroborated by nature in a river that had not been studied before so far. So what you generally find is that the main channel in these sandy rivers that really acts like a big corridor. We find here a assemblage of 5 to 10 species on 3,400 kilometers of the river. These are sand dune dwellers. So the river is transporting a lot of sand, and these dunes, they are very selective because not many organisms can cling to these sand grains. Whereas the beta diversity, the diversity of species that we find one lateral lake after another, is skyrocketing. We were very happy that Inés and also Mercedes Marchese were already very skillful with these species and were also contributing to this biodiversity book series that I was co-editing, because it is really just amazing. And we also, again, we could attribute this very clearly to organic matter, to oxygen consumption, to age of these lateral water bodies, and so on. So in the end, we have the pulsing hydrology of rivers that is providing with this rhythm a dynamics of habitats and of available resources, which translate into windows of opportunity where a plethora of resources of food or of habitats is available, or windows of susceptibility. And in consequence of that, we have resource use or risk avoidance strategies. And then I was sitting in the Pantanal and I sat on one of these earth mounds made by the native people there thousands of years ago. And then I saw, well, they are behaving exactly the same way. So human culture in floodplains and ecosystem strategies or biological strategies, they are just the same. We have a small difference. The biological strategy is fixed in genes, and the human adaptive strategies, they are fixed in traditions and in cultures. And both are threatened by the same threats. This is also quite interesting finding. So we have a kind of, the floodplain is a kind of generator of new strategies to floods and droughts. And from there, these ideas or these strategies go floating upriver, downriver, along with the flow or against the flow by swimming or in ships. In ecology, these flow impacts have had very great importance, especially in the 1980s, 90s, where all these big ecosystem functioning concepts came about. It was dominated by Vanotti's river continuum concept, which is more or less saying that in the headwaters, we have mostly tree litter that is falling, and the less efficient the shredders there, the more of these particles are getting down and feed the mussels and then the more and more the river widens up, we have more and more phytoplankton and primary production, and the system switches from a respiratory driven to a primary productive driven system. And this concept was developed by people that have never seen a natural river before. They were actually working on small streams and regulated rivers in the United States. Then Wolfgang Jung came and said, whoa, 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 hold on. Actually, it is very important how long the river is flooding its floodplain and at which time. And we see a lot of adaptations. And actually, we have this Rip Sparks named it later the flood pulse advantage, which means that the aquatic organisms can swim over these flooded meadows and eat what has been produced by the terrestrial part of the ecosystem. I did stable isotope studies later on. I could show that up to 30% of the fish in the Pantanal are using this terrestrial carbon because it's so nicely marked by C4 plants. And then a little bit later, we had quite some discussion, Wolfgang Jung and me, about floodplains of headwaters. And I said, yes, they are also flooding. For him, it was only unpredictable and there were no adaptations possible. And there I proved him wrong. And I told him, look, we have unpredictable individual events. Yes, you are right. But you are not right in saying that there are no adaptive strategies, because the period when these strong spades are occurring, they are predictable because we are sitting in a seasonal climate. And I made studies on aquatic insect emergence, and I could show that we had, contrary to what we know in Europe, with these monovoltine or bivoltine insect species that are forming swarms at a certain time of the year, we always have adults and we always have larvae, because these organisms are adapted to these events. But still in this, I would say, risk reduction strategy, you find also a wave life-like movement. And I was really fascinated when I saw that Rüdiger Wagner, who did emergence studies in the Breitenbach in a small stream in Germany, found exactly the same thing. And with neural network analysis, he could show that we have typical years, typical higher flood years, typical more siltation years, and so on. And this is decisive. So what I want to show you here is that we have an overlay between the morphological setting and the hydroclimate that then defines over these annual rhythms. Now coming to the humans, here a photo from the Paraguay River about 20 years ago, and the people are sitting there and fishing as they did 10,000 years before. So there, not that much has changed. Again, I've showed this before, the floodplain is acting as a inventory, I would say, a kind of atelier where the people can invent new ideas and adaptations, and then these ideas go traveling. They go traveling literally. Here you see a recent raft photo from the Congo River. This here is a experimental archaeology picture from Lake Constance, where the people really learn to profit by these resources, so the windows of opportunity, and by the same time avoid the windows of susceptibility. And moreover, this corridor aspect is very important. So far, we believed that humanity, the Out of Africa movement, was mostly in the Ethiopian Rift in the dry areas. This is wrong. It is just that the deserts are keeping human bones much better through the millennia than wet conditions. But most recent research shows that humanity has migrated along rivers, and that there was also a kind of old Nile, which was many kilometers farther west than the current Nile. And also in this area, they invented agriculture from floodplain, from drawdown. So when the water level goes down, it leaves back a very fertile area, fertilized with dead fish and so on. And their agriculture was invented. And also what we call the cradle of the European African culture, the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, today mostly in Iraq. This area was a gigantic floodplain area, Mesopotamia, between the rivers of Euphrates and Tigris. Here, this is a picture from my dear colleague Aziz Balouche, who has studied in Senegal and Mali and other areas in Morocco, the archaeology of landscapes. And he could show how humans have interfered with landscapes by terracing, by slash and burn cultures that leave back some charcoal that you can study, and how this has increased the diversity of these landscapes. And if you look at these pictures, they're remarkably similar among different continents. So this interaction and this cultural landscape creation by humans is a very old pattern. Now, here in Europe, we see here the amber routes, which were transporting amber from the Baltic Sea to different places in the world. They have been reconstructed. Many of them followed also the rivers. And here we have the Danube, the Rhine-Danube axis, which also, and then later on connected with the Son and Rhone River, which created a kind of tree star that is connecting different cultural events, just let alone the Roman colonization of Europe that went along these river systems. And they were also conveyors for wine. I'm coming, as I showed you, from Bingen, which is a wine town. And if you see here the distribution of wine types, then you see very clearly how the rivers has acted as a cultural conveyor. And here it's a little bit fun. Opposite to the diversity and distribution of wines, we have here the cheese in France. And funnily, here it is like in biogeography, the geographical barrier that is decisive. So you find the highest diversity of cheese in France in the French Jura. So in the Jura Mountains, where you have so many different valleys that are separating these different populations or populations of cheese, so to say. Now, if you look at human impacts on rivers, there is a historical development starting with individual hunting actions, over use of some species later on, especially in Africa. Robin Welcome has described this very nicely. And then step by step, these different impacts are increasing. And what is happening here, that is the interdependence between these stressors is increasing, whereas the interdependence of the ecosystem, which means the stability of the ecosystem, is decreasing. So what we have today is that we cannot point at a smoking gun. There is no single cause for the extinction of a given species. It is rather the overlay of high temperatures with invasive species, with chemical impacts on the water, and so on. And this makes it so difficult to explain to the people, to the deciders, how and what to do, because they want to have a clear answer. They want to see the smoking gun, but there is no smoking gun anymore. This is gone. In the beginning of the 20th century, Robert Lauterborn has described the Rhine downstream BASF, Badische Anilin and Soda Fabrik, who was the only big polluter at the Rhine at this time, with chemical spills that the Rhine turned red from one day to another, or blue, just depending on which anilic color they were producing. But this is long ago. Today we have an overlay of thousands of different chemical spills and so on. And at the same time, we have a reduction of the habitat diversity. Here, this colorful graph shows a recent study that we did on the fate of a little square area of 25 times 25 meters. We studied this in the 19th century with maps, and then in the more recent time with aerial pictures, and then finally with satellite imagery. And if you have a very good georeference of each of these pixels, you can show what has come out of it, and then you can quantify it. And I summarized the message here in the middle. The Rhine correction has eliminated more than 1,000 islands in the Rhine, has cut off most of the meanders, and has deconnected the floodplain water bodies. So, Pavel, what you guys are doing in Poland with the ecohydrology, using bacteria to clean up water, what you need is active surface, like the lung. But in this case, it's the active surface of sediments, of vegetation that is underwater and so on, where the bacteria can grow, dwell well, and do what we want them to do, for example, denitrification. So we have lost 94% of this space in the Upper Rhine. And so it's no wonder that the so-called self-purification is strongly reduced. And it's not only the floodplain, but it's also the gravel bars, where most of these very nice bacteria that clean our water are living. These bacteria have no room left because the sediments are not moving anymore. They are blocked by 18 different dams in the Upper Rhine. And then we have not much sediments left either. So in the Netherlands, we have a tremendous erosion problem because the sediments do not flow down the Rhine anymore, which means that the capacity of the ecosystem to deliver these ecosystem services is reduced. Now, I have talked quite a lot now, 24 minutes. And I would like now invite the students to ask questions if you have questions to this first part. Maybe you can put it in the chat and then Pavel will repeat that so I understand it well.
Yes, good idea. So please, you can type your questions to the chat. We have greetings from Indonesia, from Professor Sutapa.
Oh, Salamat, what is it? I only know Salamat Jalan and Salamat Datang. This is both not correct.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you.
Malam.
Malam.
Hey, Pak.
Well, if there are not so many questions now, you can also ask them later on.
Yeah, I believe it was all clear, or it was too sudden to say.
Yeah, maybe too sudden. Yeah. So
remember, there is a possibility of asking questions, so you can prepare your questions for the later.
You can just put them in the chat, and later on we will go through them one by one. So what all rivers need is really water flow and stream power, which means we need water to erode sediments and to deposit sediments. Here you see this beautiful picture from Jack Stanford from the Flathead Lake, which has been a research station, which has been studied very well. Then we need the space where this can happen, this erosion and deposition, because we are getting a kind of dynamic habitat mosaic, which means that you have side-by-side habitats that are 5 minutes old and habitats that are 100 years old. And of course, you have succession of different plant communities and subsequent faunal communities living in there. And this makes that across a floodplain, you find a very high diversity compared to a more stable ecosystem like a forest, where you may have beech trees growing over dozens of hectares. And the environmental flow aspect in this is the timing. This is also very important, that the flow event comes to the right moment. If we have a flood in spring, inundating the meadows, then the fish like carp or pike, they are happy because they can reproduce and their offspring has warm water with lots of food. If during this time the floodplain falls dry, all these fish have a big problem because even 10 minutes are enough to kill all the fry, all the eggs. And lastly, of course, we need the sediments. We very often hold these sediments back, or we dredge them out from the river for constructions, and this is deleterious for the rivers. And this is not only happening in developing countries or global south countries, it has been happening in large quantities in the Rhine, in the Loire. In 1984, the bridge crossing the city of Tours collapsed, the Wilson Bridge, just because people had taken out too much sand and then the pillars of this bridge were eroded. So now I'm coming to the second part of about the river culture concept. I asked people all over the world after a big conference in China 2018, can we live in peace again with our rivers? And if yes, how? And we had 124 people from 24 countries that have answered. You see here the numbers, the figures that are corresponding to the river portraits that were published here in this UNESCO book that I edited recently. You can flash it, it's for free. Unfortunately, you cannot find it on Google Scholar. This is a problem with UNESCO publishing. And it is not printed, but you can download it for free. And I think there are, from many countries, as you can see here, lots of examples. We have a big deficit here for Central and Northern Asia, and also from North America, we only had very few contributions. The book Rivers of North America was just edited just before I asked them. So the authors were all tired of that. But one of the, for me, most surprising results was actually this picture here. It is the Pachamama philosophy from South America. And a Dutch colleague, Richard Bolens, who is running this Moving Rivers Consortium with about 30 PhD students, which would be nice to be connected with our network, by the way. It shows the parallel view of the hydrological cycle and the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So you're born as raindrops, then you fall here into the Andes Mountains. There is a big god, it's called this Apu. And he decides if you have had a good life or a bad life, and if you may be reborn. Then you start as a little stream. If you were not so good, you are not going to hell, but you are going to a glacier and you are frozen and have to wait until you are reborn. So we have a lot of rebirth in the next years with climate change. And then these rivers are growing and are interacting, and you can even enter the netherworld, the space below you. So the groundwater is analogized with the netherworld for the souls, which I also found absolutely fascinating. And then you grow and develop well, and then you're getting old and you die when you enter the sea. And then the sea world, Mama Korcha, is giving you the opportunity to evaporate and to start your life again with Kyuchi and Mayu forces that bring you back to Apu. Yeah, and this is, of course, an absolutely fascinating image. People that are still having this kind of cosmology have no problems at all in understanding how important it is to maintain the water cycle. But what can we do in our westernized, civilized world? I would say the last shamanistic or animalistic approach to environment was in the Celtic period. Yeah, so say until the turning of the time, so maybe until 200 or so. And here I would say we do have things. We have elements that bring us sense of place and sense of time, Like in the Loire, we just had this, the Grande Remontée du Sel. Actually, it's about ships that had been carrying water from, salt from the salt pans in the seaside, upriver with the western winds to the city of Orléans. And today, the same ships, reconstructions of them, and many colleagues from the Vistula are coming and show their own ships there, very nice, in a European meeting and festival. And wherever these ships are stopping, they're not selling salt, they are selling ideas, and they are working for a legal personality of the river, the Parlement de Loire. So the question is, what is driving change? If we look at these traditional societies, there were ups and downs. We had very flourishing periods, then we had flood catastrophes or droughts. So it went just up and down. And then with increasing industrial impact, our water quality was decreasing. And then sometimes, in some cases, we had a big bang. And this big bang for the Rhine was the 1st of November, 1986. You may remember that in spring of the same year, we had the meltdown at Chernobyl in Ukraine. So we had two gigantic environmental accidents at the same time. In the case of the Rhine, it was actually in Switzerland, the Sandoz enterprise producing pesticides was burning, and the water to extinguish the fire was then running into the Rhine and killed practically 100% of the eel and tench population. Hectares of dead fish were swimming at the surface of the River Rhine. And it may be cynical if I say that this was maybe the best thing that could have happened to the Rhine, because this was the decisive moment, the catharsis, when the riparian states of the Rhine that had been enemies in World War I and II before now sat around one table and they said, yes, we have to do something. We have to improve water quality. And shortly later, 92, 95, we had gigantic floods. And then they said, yes, and we have to deal with the floods too. And these were the starting points for the European Water Framework Directive and for the European Flood Directive. So this shows that Europe can work and that transboundary rivers, the people can collaborate across borders despite having different approaches, values, and administrations. But we need this kind of wake-up call. And the question is, what if the wake-up call is hitting too hard? If we have, with climate change, we have dramatic events, and it's not so easy to stand up. In the case of the Rhine, the bad water, the dirty water with the pollutants, with the pesticides, was flushed into the North Sea and diluted there, hopefully. And but we have events that are so harsh that we will have difficulties to stand up after that again. So instead of this negative warning, the river culture concept has a different approach to produce a kind of positive attitude towards the water. Learn from the river, live with the river, feel and love the river. This is in short the message. Totally strange that earlier Max Planck, basic science scientist, is developing these more emotional words. But I think it is really important for culture and education that we are not only argumenting with facts. Of course, we need the facts, we need the engineering, we need all what has been done before, but we also have to bring it to the hearts of the people. So to give value to the rhythm of the waters here with the UNESCO global network of water museums, we are working worldwide on a questionnaire. How would you like your urban river? And we offer different photographs to the people so they can choose, and we analyze the answers. And it was very interesting, for example, in China, especially the elder people, but also the more educated people, they are preferring a higher degree of wilderness. So this means we have to target our communication strategy to the different social groups. The second part is adapt these life cycle strategy of living with droughts and floods. And we have that in many traditional cultures, for example, the fishing, profiting from this flood pulse advantage, and also the fertilization of plain areas of floodplains by the floods. But we have overrun this in many areas. Today, Germany, for example, we only produce a very small part of our food by ourselves, and we are importing a lot of that. So we have to learn how to integrate this again, and also to learn this rhythm. And here we are building human river encounter sites, which means sites where people in cities are able to expose themselves to nature, to listen to bird songs, to watch the water flow, to smell, to feel the cooler air. And then the people are feeling better, and they ask why. And then they see, okay, because I was in contact with nature, I'm feeling at home. I'm feeling, I wouldn't say loved, but I'm feeling somehow embraced by nature. And it is very important to bear in mind that different people have different approaches to this. In Japan, for example, recently such a park was built, but the population is not by no means ready for that. So downtown Tokyo, you can see an area without any people. And this is a riverbank park. My student, Ijin Kao, was just there, and she reported that to me. For me, absolutely unimaginable that in densely populated Tokyo, you find places where people do not go, just because they do not feel cozy there. So they have to learn it somehow, and that's what we are working on. Third part is how to do this, either by using human traditional knowledge. And here I just given you the example from these batellerie, from these traditional ships that are used on the Loire today for ecotourism and also for spreading ideas like rivers. And then the other approach is learning from biota. Yeah, here's some insect or some millipede examples here. These small millipedes have a brain smaller than 1 millimeter, and they are the best hydrologists I've ever seen. They know when the flood is coming. Then they climb up the trees to avoid flooding. And we have this either with pile dwellings or with floating houses, kind of mimicking this behavior. On the other hand, in the Loire, we have an ant that is absolutely amazing. It builds waterproof houses. So when the Loire is flooding during winter time, these ants are living well at 50 centimeters depth in the sand with the water above. We still do not know how they do that. And in the Netherlands, they are building the floodable houses in dikes, so they can also adapt this. So these are just some suggestions. I want to study this further. And the last is that what I call bassin de responsabilité, a basin of responsibility, that we do not consider the river anymore as a sum of pieces. Here, a little bit of France, a little bit of Germany, a little bit of Switzerland, and so on for the Upper Rhine case, but they are really realizing what we are claiming for in the European Water Framework Directive, that we have a joint river basin management plan. The idea is very good, but the realization is very bad. In Europe, we have very good examples from France, also from Spain, for example, where we have river basin management units, but especially in France, they have lost a lot of political power in the last years, and we are having currently a big project, One Water, in France to find a new scientific baseline for water sharing, water management. Okay, so this was a book. Now, maybe I leave the questions for later. Make a small, let's breathe a little bit or take a little bit of tea. My voice is still very bad. And now, coming to the last and short part about the psychological and sociological part of mind changing. So this guy here is wearing a t-shirt. I cannot hear that anymore. He just does not want it. And I asked him to make this grimace. I like the word by Mark Twain. Denial is not a river in Africa. It's of course a word game with the Nile. Denial means you do not want to know about something. You refuse to accept the truth, and we have to come over it because the ecosystem resilience is falling very fast. The restoration costs are skyrocketing, and in between we have the citizen who does not want to change his or her attitudes. And moreover, we have this complexity of different views to a single situation, which is complex. And then we have, on the other hand, the interactions, and all these people that have all these different views to it do not communicate. So we really must learn to speak with the others, especially social scientists to natural scientists. Natural scientists and engineers, they are quite well. Social scientists and economists, social scientists and law people goes quite well. But in between, there is a big gap. And that is what we have to overcome. And maybe I go a little bit faster through this. If we want to motivate people, we have to see where they are. So if we are talking to somebody who is totally opposing to change, then it is very difficult, and you have to raise interest and curiosity first. If you have people that are already taking action, they have been participating in a river cleanup or so, then it is easier to go down to maintaining action on the long run. This perseverance is extremely important in social and socio-ecological action. We very often have, I would say, alpha males, silverbacks, people that are really very strong with their character, but they do not allow new people to come into the play. And then when these strong people are getting older, then nobody wants to follow them up. So it's very important to build up this perseverance. This has to do with gender. Very often these guys are male silverbacks, and we need in the water business more women and female thinking. We are working with people from IHE who have some experts working on this. And in the book, we also have one chapter on gender, but nota bene, I made a request to more than 200 people to answer my questionnaire, and only 4 women from India answered the questionnaire. So it shows that there is a lot of things to be done. Then the different stimuli for this engagement, it is also, we have to read the people. We have to understand what is your valuescape, what is important for you. And I show you now in the following some examples for projects which have been very successful. And I would say there is a problem sphere, which means the pollution or the need for restoration or whatsoever. Then we have the social sphere with these different values. You could also say the valuescape. And then we have the solution sphere, which means we have made it. We have matched the problem sphere with the solution, with the social sphere. So here the project of Manuel Zão in Brazil, Belo Horizonte, was a perfect success for a river cleanup. It started with medical doctors that reclaimed that too many children were dying from waterborne diseases, and their mothers started making a movement. And then the scientists came in, then the artists came in, then the lawyers came in, and the politicians. And in the end, it was a big movement, and it had a joint, so to say, symbol. This Manuel here, this Manuel Zão, was an elder guy who was somebody with whom everybody could identify. And then here, Now Let Me Flow in India, precisely in the state of Kerala, fantastic things, 60,000 stream kilometers cleaned up and made flow again, not perfectly restored, but in many cases, yes. This was based by a government that was really seeking the collaboration with the people. We have a high degree of literacy. That is very important. The people know what is happening. Same thing with the Manuel Zaun project. Minas Gerais has the highest degree of literacy in all over Brazil. And then the government acted like a dancer, like a good dancer. So when it was needed, they took action and they led the people. But as soon as they have seen, the people are taking over the responsibility, they also stepped back, but they stayed with them. And this is very important. So this is this famous bottom up meets top down between grassroots movements from the people and the government. This has to match. And Kerala, for me, is the best example for developing countries how this may work. The next example here is Zurich, daylighting 16 kilometers of streams and 65 kilometers of streams restored in the city for money. Zurich is the capital of capitalism, I would say. It's one of the biggest money places in the world. And they have found out that each liter per second of polluted water that runs through a Swiss water wasteland plant costs 3,000 Swiss francly. So if you make it to separate rainwater from wastewater, you can earn a lot of money, or better, save a lot of money, and still produce these nice streams. Perfect match. Last example here is a dam that has been almost entirely dismantled. You see the original wall here at the left part of the dam here. This was the height, and the dam lake was very long. It was so long that the salmon that were spawning there, the youngsters, in the no current of the lake, they did not find where to go, and then they used all the yolk mass and died. Yeah. So today, EDF, Électricité de France, has invested a lot of money, and they can lift these floodgates during migration of salmon, and they also release the sediments that have been accumulated there. So, but it costed only a lot of money and 25 to 30 years of discussion. And that is the biggest problem. We do not have this time anymore. So our communication has to be more efficient. So summarizing this, the success recipes: cultural connectivity, top down, bottom up, perseverance, and charismatic leaders. And so I'm almost closing here. Environment positivity, the EUCOR Fall School, you see here the sad faces of these students of 12 different nations that have taken part in my fall school. Show that is a nice thing, that you are in a community. And most important, I would say, is you do something and you see the result of what you're doing. Most people say, oh, I'm alone, I can't do anything. And then there are millions of these people, and each one of them could do something as soon as we find two people that start working together. And so our international master tries to bring this together in this kind of butterfly. We try to match the problem sphere, the biophysical analysis of the system, with the biophysical engineering, which would be today called nature-based solution. And then we have the social skills to analyze the social system, the valuescape, and to develop the communication strategy. And if you're interested in that, you can start studying this at Strasbourg and Karlsruhe as of September next year. So that was it. I thank you very much for your attention. I'm open for your question now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for the amazing lecture. I think all of us are really astonished by the amount of knowledge you were able to share with us. Also, for me personally, thank you for these positive examples in the end of practical implementations that are already ongoing. So there is something positive that is changing. There is some change. I think we have some questions in the chat. Also, probably the second part of your presentation already answered some of them in some part, but anyway, we could find another answer now or summarize it. So the first question is, what accountability mechanisms are necessary to protect water and river heritage? I believe very broad answer can be given, but please try to make it short. Sorry, your microphone is off, I think.
Better now?
Oh, yes, now.
I just
Ah,
okay.
okay.
So sorry. This question ends up or boils down to the big question: what is the price for water? When you're talking about accountability, and here we are talking about sharing common pool resources, like Eleanor Ostrom has analyzed it, and their followers. Eleanor is not the end of the line; it is rather the beginning of a long discussion. And I could cite a range of different scientific work, but here I want to give my personal impressions. And this is: water has a price. Water is all people should have access to water, but not illimited. So my student Silvia Kardashia just came back from Mexico, Guatemala. In Guatemala, there are absolutely no water rights. You can take out as much water as you want, and this is wrong. Here in the French-German boundary area, we are having the situation that the local governments, the Region and the Regierungspräsidium, they can shut down or close the water tap. So in the Région Grand Est legislation, it is a kind of punishment for industries that are wasting water. And I really love that. So punish first those that are wasting water and give water to those that obviously are doing their best to save water. And then in another attempt, I think we have to give marks to whatever human activity, if it is traveling, business, production, house building, roads, transport, whatsoever. What is the water impact of it? And what is the benefit for humanity and for the planet? And develop a price on that. This is really something that we have to develop. And it is absolutely nonsense that you can fly from Frankfurt to Mallorca for 15 euros for a weekend. It's nonsense. This should cost 1,000 euros, because it's absolutely stupid just for one weekend to produce so much carbon dioxide. And the same is true for water. Yeah. So this is one point. And on the other hand, on the other side of the Rhine, in Baden-Württemberg, it's called Wasserklemme. And they are cutting water according to agricultural production. So if you are having agricultural production that is consuming a lot of water, then you are among the first to be cut down. And this all needs education and culture. This all needs transdisciplinarity. Rather than forbidding things. We see this with a very negative development of the Green Party in Germany, because everybody considers them as, they are trying to interrupt, they are trying to forbid what I wanted to do, and I want to live like my hedonistic parents did, despite I feel that it's not so good. Here we have really to show something positive. For example, I'm in favor of a nouvelle cuisine. You know, the nouvelle cuisine in France was invented in Lyon, starting with this very fat and greasy, heavy food that was served in France to feed especially the rural population that was working hard. And today nobody's working physically to gain that he needs 5,000 calories a day. So transform this, and now transform this excessive water use in our food, and create a nouvelle cuisine for an alimentation that is attractive, and this is hip and sexy and whatsoever, interesting for the people. And at the same time, we waste so much less water. So less meat, more cereals, more plant protein. But we had in our last meeting, in transboundary meeting, we had a farmer who said, yeah, what shall I do? Now I obeyed to what you suggested. I'm producing lentils, and nobody wants to buy them because there are no recipes. The people do not know what to do with that. And this is where education has to come in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is, we are also touching political big concepts like capitalism you mentioned in your presentation. There is probably no serious alternative for that one. However, we can try to inspire our government decision makers to be more decisive in some of the regions and do not let the market be free, because as we know, this greed from Wall Street movie is still alive, and I mean this must be controlled. And thank you for these very inspiring words.
Yes, with the greed and so on, this is the individual behavior. We are our Western civilization in Europe, in North America. It has produced a lot of egoism and this self-perfectionism, this individualism, and it is a very sad experience that you need to be in need to become more solidarian. In Brazil, the poorest people that I met were the most generous. They did not know what to eat tomorrow, but they invited me for dinner. And I do not want us to get into such a dramatic situation of need, but I think we have to work on this solidarity between the people and the solidarity between people and nature. So I'm working currently on a kind of concept that the nature is also considered as kin, as kinship, as a part of the family. This is very difficult, but Ijin, for example, she is developing a persona game, which means that you are in the situation of a fish. I'm still looking for filmmakers or experts that are producing this kind of 5D cinema where you can feel like a salmon moving upriver in two different situations, in a natural situation and then in the situation of a polluted river. Of course, we will not kill people there, but maybe the air around them can be very hot and stinky or whatsoever. So they really feel that on their skin. We have a problem as a biological species, a big problem with evolution. And this problem is that we are reacting to a direct menace. So if somebody points a gun at you or a knife at you, or if some place is burning, then the people are reacting correctly. But if somebody tells you stop smoking because otherwise in 10 years you're getting lung cancer, people are laughing at you. Yeah, because they do not feel the connection between the menace and that you are expressing and the real menace that is happening. And we have dislocated this reaction of nature to our own misbehavior in space and time. In time, of course, because we are now committing crimes that have to be where our children and grandchildren will.
I'm sorry, Professor, you are muted. I don't know why. Please unmute.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
So I said that we are this feedback mechanism of evolution is disrupted in space and time. So if I am a species and I misbehave, say I'm a fish species that is now spawning at the end of the flood season and my eggs are drying out, I will not reproduce anymore in future because my genes are just getting out of the system. But if I am somebody who is misbehaving in our industrial or social system, then the feedback mechanism is not beating me, but it is beating children in Africa or fish somewhere else. Yeah? The salmon that I'm eating here is menacing in Chile the water quality in the ocean. And I've never been to Chile. I will never see that. Only if I look at Arte or so a report on that. So we have to make this feel, this kinship.
That's very interesting. I would love to see that result, probably VR goggles, where we can. The second coin of the side of the coin of the evolution is that we have the mirror neurons in our brain.
Yeah.
So we can learn very fast when we see that other people, or in that case, other species, are under a pressure, and our brain is able to develop stress hormones in ourselves that we can really feel the same. So maybe that's the fastest way to educate people. Take them to the polluted river, show them the outcomes, and then they can start thinking. We have another questions. For instance, one is very, I think, important. How can we make the cultural connectivity with the rivers in urban areas, especially in developing countries where rivers are very polluted, like Guatemala, you mentioned, yeah?
Yes, this is we in 2019 we published in Sustainability a book article on many examples, some of which I've been showing in my presentation today, and it is actually developing countries, the time lag between the clean river experience and the actual destroyed nature or the polluted river is very short. So I have a PhD student in Kinshasa in Congo Democratic Republic, and there she's not very old as a PhD student, but she remembers how they were playing in the water, and that was for all the children the best place to be. And today, with plastic pollution, with rivers of plastic, all this is gone. So the memory is still fresh, and we can come back. So many African countries have already banned plastic, for example, which is quite a good thing. And I think we have to work on this. And another point in developing countries, just because the training is not so homogenized as it is in the westernized countries, the creativity is much higher. So this is also one of the examples in our paper from an African town where the people in the banks of the river are doing home gardening. And this is also a fantastic way how to get into contact with nature, but also to see with how little space you can earn a little bit of money by selling vegetables and so on. So there are many things. And for me, it is also some spiritual issue, or I would say at least intangible heritage. So what are the beliefs? What are the costumes? What are the traditional activities that can be brought back or that can be transformed? And to create this sense of space, sense of time, but also sense of community, which is perceived as something very pleasant, and then you can start a movement.
Thank you very much. I think there are plenty of questions. I will try to maybe combine 2 or 3 of them into one. And there is there is probably a good question. What recommendations you have for youth? How can we help in this river culture concept and implementation of it in the reality around us?
Well, the younger people can educate the elder people, because especially my generation, most people they have a completely formatted brain, so they are not willing to change. And if younger people show that change is possible, and change does not mean a restriction but rather an enrichment of life, and that you feel better with that, and you have a less heavy consciousness when acting like that, it is not perceived as something negative, but as something positive. And a point that I did not touch today, but this will be my next keynote tomorrow in the High School of Arts of the Rhine here next door in Strasbourg. It's about arts. It's about photography. It's about music. It's about all kinds of activities where you use non-verbal communication to show how you are connected with nature, and you discover it. So in the book, I have two artists, a photographer and a plastic artist, who are describing their relationship with the river via nature, and how they express this then with their means of art. And this is very impressive. And this is just a tiny beginning. The network, the global network of water museums, has done a lot of activities. They had just an event 2 days ago on the Azores in Portugal, or in the Atlantic, where they were giving a prize to the best artist communicator. So there's your creativity, and the younger people are generally more creative than the elder. There is a big chance for you how to show that. And there are millions of examples. This is, at the moment, I would say, very diverse. It goes into many different directions. And it's very interesting to follow that. And you can learn a lot, and you can then get into this movement. And as I say, you have to show something positive. So if you can, for example, just plant plants in your space, that and then you see more butterflies in the city, and the people say, wow, look, downtown we have this rare butterfly again. This is something heartwarming. So work with aesthetics, work with positive feelings.
Thank you. There is one question, I believe also very complex, but what kind of river culture is needed to support river restoration in Western societies? How could river culture support the process of resurfacing, daylighting buried rivers? I believe this is important also for me, because in Łódź city, the town where I live, we have 18 small streams, where most of them were hidden underground, because at some time of the development of the city, they were so polluted, stinky, and ugly that decision makers decided to hide them. So what river culture stands behind these kind of rivers that we can use, to bring them back?
Yeah, in Tours, for example, people are making bicycle excursions along the ancient river. And there are some places where the water is still coming up. So there's a wetland in the middle of a park, which is actually a former stream, and to bring back the memory. And I think we need a better exchange of positive examples. So we are reinventing the wheel. I have currently 2 PhD students working on efficiency, improving efficiency in conservation, but also in restoration. And now I'm, as of 1st of November, the same for urban nature-based solutions, because we have thousands of examples which are quite nice. And then you cannot exploit this with a high impact factor journal, which is important for the scientists. So it is just communicated within the city. And what is very important is to make networks. So we have some of these networks. Next week we have here in France the French Association of Urbanists that will meet here. We have 400 people from different cities here, and I will try to network there again. But there is, in my view, a very important need that initiatives connect better, and with artificial intelligence, we have a very good chance to find out more, especially about this badly published information. And for me, the most important information is the hands-on knowledge of site managers, of the people that have done this project, because they have the experience. You, as a scientist, you may have wonderful ideas that do not work at all in the real world, because the people are afraid that their child would fall into the water. They are afraid that behind a tree somebody stands with a big stick in the hand and hits it on your head or whatsoever. It is really you have to touch the souls of the people with whom you are working, and then this is very individual. And then if you have high numbers, then you find out the patterns. That's what we are currently working on. In Switzerland, I like this very much, this idea of Quartiersvereine. It's an association of a quarter, and they are deciding what to do. and then they discuss this with the mayor, and the mayor gives them money, and then they found out. So it's very grassroots organization, but highly professional. So there is no improvisation whatsoever. It is really solid, highly engineered measures to build a new kindergarten or whatsoever. And then these Quartiersvereine, among themselves, between Zurich and Lucerne and Bern and so on, they are networking and they are exchanging their ideas. So they are forming a kind of swarm intelligence. And that is really a good idea. So we have to communicate better, and we have to use the new possibilities with large language models and so on to disperse this better, to analyze first what has been done and then to disperse it better. But don't believe everything what the ChatGPT tells you.
Yes,
Use your
definitely.
brain.
Definitely. What you mentioned about the people being afraid of water, it's something that touch us also. Recently, we implemented blue-green infrastructure, a small pond at the students' dormitories area. And the director of this area told us that we need to create a big fence to protect students from that water, because the depth of that pond was 30 centimeters and they can drown inside. So I was really, really upset with what's going on with people, how they can be really so in danger of water, that even a small pond in the area that is, and completely not adapted to climate change is a problem. So education is in general probably the foundation of everything. I heard recently that in Switzerland, every week, one day, the children need to spend in forest or go outside from school to touch the grass, feel that. I believe we are isolated so much that in Western civilization, especially, we are forgetting about this being part of nature. Yeah.
Yes, and it has to do with a sense of responsibility. And this is also a very ambiguous thing. So the more you are forbidding, the more people are relying on these rules. And for them, they are not using their brain anymore. They just obey the rules. And so remember when we had the first GPS, how many people sank their car into a stream? Well, because the GPS said turn right, and then blutch, they entered into the water because they blindly believe in that. So I think we also need, and this is very difficult in times of ChatGPT, which is taking our decisions in the future, we need to reactivate our common sense. And it has also juridical consequences. So I see this on both sides of the Rhine. If you go swimming in the Rhine, you may drown because the water current is very strong. So if you go swimming in the Rhine or in Switzerland and you drown, the consequences, you are dead. And well, that's it. If you go swimming in any river in France and die, the consequence is that the mayor will be fined because somebody has to be responsible. And this taking off the responsibility of the individual citizen is also something very difficult. But to give back this responsibility to the citizen, you need an educated citizen so that people behave themselves. And this is very difficult in this highly individualized and highly egoistic and egocentric society. We need more solidarity and we need more sense of responsibility.
Thank you very much. I believe this is a kind of a summary that really concludes our meeting. So please, use your brains, and that will be your big advantage in future when most of people will rely on ChatGPT or AI. And the skill of using brain and being reliable for your actions is really important now. Thank you very much, Professor Wantzen, once again. I would like to propose in the end that whoever can, please turn on your camera. And I would like to ask Yankee to take a group photo that we will later post on our social media. Yeah, good to see your faces.
I'm also
our
putting
youth representatives, Giuseppe. Thank you. Thank you
nice
for
to see
being
you
with
again,
us.
Giuseppe. I also put our master course here, the link to our master course in the chat.
Thank you. I believe that will be useful.
Yeah.
So, do we have more people ready to turn on the cameras? Okay, so Yankee, if you are ready, please take a photo of us. Done?
More people are coming.
Okay, okay.
All put your camera on, please.
Okay, Yankee, I believe we can take a photo. Then we will add some pictures to the missing profiles, and that's fine.
Okay, and I have given you the PDF of my talk, so
Yeah.
you can share it among the students.
Yes, thank you also, but a recorded version also will be available for our members. Thank you. I believe it was a very successful opening of our series. Professor Wantzen put the level very high. So for the next speakers, it's a little bit challenge, but we will try to handle. Thank you a lot and
Thank
have a
you.
nice rest of the day. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Hey.
Bye bye.